Yo, what's going on everybody? Welcome to a much happier episode here at the stable because we are back to work on the Scrappy Boy, yes, finally. And I apologize if in the last video I was a little bit cranky, but this f***ing car, man. I'm just excited to work on the SCRAPSTANG and finally get this thing moving under its own power. It's been nearly 2 years since we started working on this, and we've made a ton of heavy modifications to get to this point, but now I just want to see it move. I just want to see it move. So we are in a bit of a time crunch because I do want to get this car running under its own power before the end of the month of March. So there's a lot of things we have to do. We already rebuilt the engine as well as the transmission sitting right there. But before we throw them back in here, we have to address some surface rust issues as well as taking care of a couple bare metal spots. And because we want this engine bay to look as pretty as we can make it, we also have some spot welds that we have to grind down. We are at the point, ladies and gents, where we will soon start reaping the benefits of all our hard work over the last couple years. But with that, welcome to another Scrapalicious episode. Let's get to work. We're gonna kick things off by propping the car up pretty high in order to get access to all of the lower areas in the engine bay so we can properly sand everything. And in order to know that we've scratched every surface with 80 grit, we're gonna be using this thing called guide coat, or you may know it as, what the hell is that? What the guide coat is going to do is tell us where we've sanded and where we haven't sanded. And I'm going to put this literally everywhere because I want a scratch literally everywhere. Alrighty, we got most of our surfaces covered in this guide coat, and I preach the use of guide coat because it gives us very good information. It's not mandatory to use it, but it's not mandatory to wipe your butt either. But I would definitely recommend it, just like I recommend using guide coat because, again, look at that. It gives us a really good and accurate way of showing us where we've sanded. Like, we could even see differences in grit on guide coat itself. Can you guess which one is 80 grit and which one is 120 grit? Wow, just saying that made me feel like Dora the Explorer. Anyway, the 120 grit scratch, as you can see right here, gives us a good scratch, and you can see on the edges, on the ends of the scratch, kind of looks like a fine-tooth comb. And if we look at the 80 grit over here, you can see it definitely looks a little bit more aggressive, more like a not fine-tooth comb. And for shits and giggles, let's throw in another example here, an 80 grit scratch on a DA. You can see that the DA leaves more of these circle, orbital type scratches compared to our hand sanding. Like I said, it's not necessary, but there's a lot of crevices, cracks, dips, and just shapes all around the engine bay. It's a lot of area to work with, so it's good to know where you've scratched and where you haven't scratched. And speaking of scratch, I need somebody to come scratch my back because I'm still itchy from the fiberglass work we did on the G2. But anyway, we're hitting the bay with an 80 grit scratch on the DA because it's fast and it's the easiest to do first. But then comes the hard part, the hand sanding on everywhere that the DA couldn't reach, which is a lot of places. And this is kind of where you have to get creative with the sandpaper. Sometimes you have to put the sandpaper on a spreader or a paint stick in order to get to some of those crevices. Also, during this, I'm removing a lot of the old seam sealer that was kind of just chunking away, and it also revealed a lot of rust on the underside. What do you know? Ford used a lot of this seam sealer, and yet the car is still rusting. The rust that was under the seam sealer was a bit stubborn because of the small crevices that it was in, so I had to use a combination of tools and then had to bust out the big boy to make sure we got most of that rust out. So we got a lot of this thing sanded, I would say about 90%, but I started knocking off some old seam sealer as well as some very stubborn surface rust areas. But my hand's already pretty tired, so we're gonna have Burrito McGee over here finish up while I show you guys something. While Ozzy does that, looks like we got a pretty big delivery. Now, this wasn't sponsored by High Brew. Even better, it was sponsored by Michael Sanchez. Nitro Pump. Nitro Pump. I can't. Nitro Pumpkin Spice Cold Brew. Damn. Oh my God, is that pumpkin spice? 36 freaking cans? Ooh, 36 freaking cans. I mean, at the rate that I drink coffee, that's at least a 2-month supply. Mira qué chingón. ¿Nos compraron cafecitos? I mean, a 2-week supply. Michael really wanted me to try the pumpkin spice one because he doesn't get this in his area. Oh, you hear that? That's the nitro. I don't know how, but it tastes like Christmas. Well, now that we're caffeinated, I actually forgot. Yo! Hello? Wake up, what are you doing? Perdón. Come on, man. Oh, here, okay, go get lunch. Anyway, what I was saying was I forgot that I had to remove these sway bar mountain brackets because the sway bar that is used for the Mustang 2 applications requires a different mounting solution, and these are held in by a couple spot welds kind of all around, as well as some on the underside. And removing all of this will basically just help us further clean and prep this surface. I know the spot weld isn't very visible here, but once we give it a good sand, you can see one right here and one on the bottom. And for this, we're gonna use a spot weld bit. You guys have seen these quite a bit before on the channel. Shout out to Michael Sanchez. He actually sent us some really good ones. Put a little bit of wheeler on it. I just realized how much better these spot welds are than the one I was using in the last video. Look at this. Look how shiny I am with all these metal flakes. Alrighty, after a couple spot welds, okay, never mind, I forgot 2 of them. It's because I'm hungry. Ozzy's taking forever with our lunch. And now, with the help of these metal separator chisel things, coincidentally, Michael Sanchez also sent. Nice. It's a going. Okay. Oh, I broke that one. Maybe we just need a little bit more persuasion. Spot welds are really strong, guys. I mean, I undid like 10 just for this little piece, and it's only one that's holding it all back. These 2 are completely drilled out, but there's one kind of in the center, half mooning this edge right here, which is not letting it go. But there is a solution, and that solution is called violence. Haha! Man, this little bastard was stubborn. And speaking of stubborn little bastards, where's Ozzy? Ah, mira, ¿ya lo quitaste? What did you do with the money I gave you? Pues fue a agarrar lonche como dijiste. Mira, hasta me dieron una gorra. You son of a... Ozzy, what the fuck? Why is it all taken apart? Primero vete fijando cómo me estás hablando, hijo de tu madre. All right. I guess Ozzy did have a good point in removing the suspension because now we have better access to sand all the areas where we couldn't have reached with the suspension in the way. Alrighty, and that brings us to the present. We are just about ready to start shooting everything. Ozzy again sanded, cleaned, and prepped everything so we can just start shooting. So why don't we drop Ozzy a like, because I was a little bit too hard on him. Today we will be using the L418 primer from Linear Blocking Tools. It is made in the US for those those of you that get excited about that. But what I'm excited about is the fact that this is an epoxy primer as well as a high build primer. Usually when you bring a car or a panel back to bare metal, you want to coat it with epoxy primer so you can prevent a lot of corrosion. Then after the epoxy, you'll do your filler work if needed and top coat it with a high build primer. But this is both a high build and an epoxy. Okay, it's an epoxy and a high build. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that it's the same product. Usually when you use an epoxy and a high build, it's gonna be two different products. And the thing about using two different products is that they will expand and contract differently when the car or the panel heats up and cools down. And that could cause cracking if the changes are significant. But with it being the same product, that means we're not gonna have different substrates with different brand products, therefore guaranteeing a better result. I've also been using a couple heaters to keep the panels warm. This primer likes to be a little bit on the warmer side. We're going to be mixing this cocktail at a 4-to-1 ratio with a 10% reduction. Wait a minute, 4 to what? And what are we deducting? No worries, we're not doing any math here because the cup right here will help us. As you can see, we got a 4-to-1 mixture right here and a 10% reduction. So what we're gonna do is put everything to this number 5. Our primer is going to go up to this line where the 4 is, and we're putting it up to the 5 because that's the biggest ratio that we can mix in this cup. Our hardener is going to go on this 1 column, and that we're gonna put up to 5. And then our reducer, we're also gonna put to 5. So let's try not to make a mess here. All right, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, almost there. Damn, right on the 5. We did make a little bit of a mess, but it's okay. And now our hardener, again, is going to go to that next 5. And for the reducer, easy peasy, to that next 5. And now we mix. Okay, here's the crazy part. After we're done mixing it, it has a 20-minute induction time, meaning we kind of just have to let it do its thing, let all the chemicals mingle and react with each other. But during those 20 minutes, it's a good idea for us to give it a final wipe down with a light colored towel so we can make sure the surface is clean. And today we're gonna be using the internet's favorite spray gun, the $15 HVLP from Harbor Freight. I love these guns. I have like 4 of them. They're super cheap and they spray pretty good. But our induction time is now up. Whew, that's strong. So let's go ahead and make a mess here. Now I'm wishing I would have mixed up a little bit more. I don't know if that's gonna be enough to do a full coat all the way around, but we'll see. I'm gonna start with the bottom first since that's probably gonna be the hardest to access. Alrighty, so we got a first coat on there. I did run out of paint, not even like a halfway through, so I didn't get any on this apron or behind the radiator core support. But I mean, I'm liking the way that this sprays and it lays down. My pressure was a little bit too high at first, so I was just kind of dumping material. But you can see kind of what it looks like there. That's just the first coat. So I think we're doing pretty good. Obviously we didn't get any on the outsides, but we're not done yet. I do have some more mixed up already. I'm just waiting on the 20-minute induction time for that, and then we'll start shooting this. And before we top coat what we've already sprayed, we have to wait 30 minutes in between in order for us not to have any issues. Alrighty folks, we are now done with the second coat. It's been hanging out for about an hour or so, but I am loving, absolutely loving how it's setting up. I mean, you can definitely see some orange peel in there, but overall it flattens up really nice. I don't know why, but I also really like the smell of epoxy. I don't know if that's good or not. But where we got the best finish, I would say, would be the radiator support. As you can see, it's damn flat. I don't see much orange peel there. But there's an easy explanation as to why that one came out so good, and that's because it was the easiest to spray. Anywhere inside of these areas, as you guys saw, I was kind of curled up and couldn't even hold the gun in the right position. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not as easy as it was to do here, so that's why we got a really good flat finish up front. But again, I'm really happy with the finish. The only issue now is the epoxy primer kind of highlights how ugly some of my welds were. And some of you may be asking, well, why didn't we spray this in a spray booth? Well, I got two good reasons for that. One, we don't own a spray booth, and two, this is the SCRAPSTANG. It would be like an honest politician. It just doesn't make sense, right? So now pretty much all that's left is to hurry up and wait for that paint to cure so we can start reassembling everything back together and try to get this thing running. Holy crap, guys. For these next couple days, these next couple weeks, we're just gonna be hauling ass, trying to get this thing to move under its own power. And we've had a lot of help from the Catman, Michael Sanchez, Kevin Campbell, and a couple other of our Patreons to hit our goal of making this thing run before March. But yeah, shout out to Ozzy for advancing us as much as he did. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.